Hello and welcome to the news. I am Sajo Brito. Coming up this afternoon, media houses denied access to cover the third ordinary session of the National Assembly. My guest today is human rights activist and social commentator Pasamba Jau, who will be talking to me on the burning issues in the country. But first, we'll begin with the newspapers. The Point newspaper is reporting that 100 Senegalese soldiers test positive for COVID-19 in the Gambia. Schools to reopen with strict Ministry of Health and World Health Organization protocols, says a minister, and Banjul City Council rubbishes mismanagement allegations, and Citizens Alliance urges government to plan economic exit strategy. Let's take a look at some of these stories in detail. 100 Senegalese soldiers test positive for COVID-19 in the Gambia. The Senegalese army says about 100 of its soldiers on peacekeeping mission in the Gambia have tested positive for COVID-19. The military contingent, comprising 600 soldiers, are returning home. They have been quarantined in Tubakuta on Senegalese territory near the border with the Gambia. As a precautionary measure, those who tested positive are asymptomatic. More tests were being done according to reports. Banjul City Council rubbishes mismanagement allegations. Mustafa Bacheli, the Chief Executive Officer of Banjul City Council, has strongly denied reports suggesting that there was mismanagement and corruption at the council, dismissing such reports as false and intended to tarnish the reputable image of the council, thereby setting the records straight. In a press conference on Friday, Mr. Bacheli shed light regarding the allegation against the council and its mayoress. He was quoted as saying, "We all know what is going on. There's a smear campaign against Rohey Malick Lowe. Others are associating it with politics." Commenting on the 10 million microfinance project initiated by Rohey Malick Lowe to empower Gambian women, he said the project was single-handedly initiated by the mayoress. Citizens Alliance urges government to plan economic exit strategy. Citizens Alliance Party insists that a continued and indefinite presence of foreign forces in our country entrenches a caricature of perception about our sovereignty as well as its impact on the morale of our national security forces, and urges government to find an exit strategy. The party, in a release over the weekend, urged President Adama Barrow's government to expedite the security sector reform process and work with stakeholders to implement the validated national documents such as the National Security Policy, the National Security Strategy, and the Security Sector Reform Strategy. Schools to reopen with strict Ministry of Health and World Health Organization protocols. The Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education has informed that schools will generally reopen throughout the country with strict Ministry of Health and World Health Organization guidelines. The information was disclosed to the public during MAPSE and Stakeholders Forum, which was held at the Ministry's Conference Hall on Thursday in Banjul. They explained that things need to be put in place accordingly to ensure that all schools reopen safely in compliance with the Ministry of Health and WHO COVID-19 safety protocols. According to MOPSI officials, the public will be kept informed as to when exactly schools will reopen, generally adding that the safety of students and teachers are paramount to the ministry and its stakeholders. That's it for a Point newspaper. Let's take a look at Fourier. The Fourier newspaper is reporting that GRA generates over $7 billion so far in 2020 despite COVID-19 hitches. COVID-19 related tax relief for businesses in Gambia, and of course Banjul Breweries sells its beverage component to Gambian investor. Let's take a look at that story. Banjul Breweries sells its beverage component to Gambian investor. Ibrahim Silla, the Minister of Information and Communication Infrastructure, has revealed that the suspended Banjul Breweries Limited has sold its beverage component to an unnamed Gambian investor. Silla said he believed now that they have a Gambian who has bought the soft drink component of the brewery, people will still continue to patronize the products of the company. This development, Minister Silla said, comes after a series of consultations between the Trade Ministry and Banjul Breweries since the company was asked to cease operations in the country. That's it for the newspapers. Let's go for a break and we'll be right back. Stay tuned. Welcome back. And now, as the new draft constitution finally made its way to the National Assembly, some Gambian media houses were denied access from covering the session. More in this report by Jaka Sisejai.
The National Assembly today began its third ordinary session with the new draft constitution at the top of the agenda. The Justice Minister is set to table a bill for the repealing of the 1997 Constitution and the promulgation of the new Constitution. But there was a problem. Journalists were not allowed entrance and they were told at the gate by police. Only GRTS, QTV and Africa TV were allowed to cover proceedings. The journalists couldn't hide their frustrations.
A government that have been advocating for justice is now engaged in injustice. Injustice in the sense that the Constitution is saying that there should not be discrimination. And if the whole media houses were banned from entering, one could have said that they may have a reason and we investigate to know the reason. But the fact that they selected some among the media houses indicate very well that that in itself is injustice. And I am disappointed that a government that struggled tooth and nail to uproot a government they accuse of being unjust is now doing unjust. What should have been done is to take all the necessary precautions regarding COVID-19 and prepare the National Assembly. If you believe that you must go through the protocol of COVID-19, well, the protocol is mask wearing. Every journalist here is putting on masks. Social distancing, you own the National Assembly, you make arrangements so that there will be social distancing. If you reach the capacity where you can no longer entertain social distancing, you stop. But that has not been done. My sister, in a nutshell, this is discriminatory at a time when they are laying a very fundamental document to the life of the people. And this is I don't want to accuse them of trying to put dust in the eye of the people, but they don't want the people to understand what is in the Constitution.
It is very disappointing when we come today and we find out that there is a restriction for members to for journalists to come and cover the very important document that is before the National Assembly members, and we found out that we have been discriminated. Only 3 media houses is allowed to come and cover this session. But actually, I get the information since yesterday when I called Jiberu and I informed him that I want the itinerary of the agenda of the National Assembly. Then he told me that there are restrictions in regards to the media houses that will cover the issue, and I engaged the GPU as the institution that is in charge of all the journalists. Then I spoke to Sekou, and Sekou gave me Sirif's number. Then I talked to Sirif Bojan Jr., the president of the GPU, and I put this to his attention that there is a restriction at the National Assembly and you guys should act fastly so that there will be no discrimination. And he told me that definitely they will get in touch with Jibaru. And then expecting that the matter has been solved, today I come to the National Assembly to cover this very important session, and I found out that security personnel has been mounted at the gate and not allowing media houses to cover the issue. But I'm disappointed, more especially the National Assembly. This is the very institution that should safeguard the constitution of this country. And the constitution of the Gambia has not discriminated its citizens or neither discriminate the media. And they are here entertaining the very document that they should protect and promote by allowing discrimination of its citizens. I am very disappointed at the National Assembly that they should not even have entertained that. And we have been covering the sessions of the National Assembly since COVID-19 has came into this country, and we have been adhering to the Ministry of Health regulation that have been by coming with our nose masks, creating the social distance, and there's a thermometer that is at the gate. Before you enter, they will test you to know your temperature. So actually there is no risk at coming to the National Assembly. So it's alarm the bell that what are they hiding? You know, when we were covering and the same COVID-19 is here, now they are restricting people when a very important document is before the National Assembly. It is very disappointing from the National Assembly.
The GPU, however, stated that they were not aware of these restrictions.
The Gambia Press Union, I must state for the records, is not involved or aware of any communication by the National Assembly or any arm of government restricting or limiting the number of journalists entering the national or covering the National Assembly proceedings of today. We were not involved. We were not communicated to. We definitely were not going to support any effort to discriminate or limit the media houses that are going to cover such a national event. What we were going to do, if we had been consulted, particularly when it comes to the television, we would have advised them to perhaps find a lead media house that could have do the covering, and other media houses can take the footages from that media house. But an outright restriction, the GPU could not have supported that or be involved in such an arrangement. What we can do is to engage the authorities at the National Assembly in a discussion. Going ahead, what had happened already today, cannot be changed. But going ahead from today, what we can do is to engage them in a discussion to make sure that we avoid occurrence of this kind of thing going forward.
The president, however, on Thursday will be visiting the National Assembly, but will journalists from other media institutions be granted access? We're yet to know. Reporting for the Fatu Network News Review, Jack CCJT.
Welcome back from that story. And whilst journalists accused the National Assembly of trying to discriminate them, some National Assembly members couldn't help but chime in on the issue. And here is Halifa Salah's reaction.
The reason why I even entered just now is because outside we have journalists claiming that the National Assembly has discriminated them by giving a right to certain media houses to cover the sessions of the National Assembly, especially the state media, and then discriminated against the private media. And Honorable Speaker, the National Human Rights Commission is established precisely to eradicate violation of fundamental rights and freedom. And we should not allow this National Assembly to be associated with any history that will show that we are discriminating anyone. So, Honorable Speaker, I want to make a motion that the decision that has been made to be annulled and another decision be made by you right away to allow those media houses outside the gates to come in, and we place them wherever they should in order to be able to observe the distancing that is necessary. If we fail to do that, Honorable Speaker, the integrity of this National Assembly will be questioned.
Honorable member, with all due respect, I have taken your observation, but I don't think it is fair to force me to take a decision immediately. Immediately, I cannot accede to that request. It's something that we will take note of, and I will consult with the office of the clerk, but I don't think anybody is stopping them from taking the feed from wherever. I am not a technician, but the essential thing is I cannot make a decision as requested immediately after you have thought of it and I did not think of it. So I think it's only fair for me to take it into consideration, and we will take note and see how best we can work out. Thank you.
Home is where the heart is. Home is where you feel safe and secure. Dalaba Housing Estate is the newest estate by Taft Africa Global, located strategically along the newly built Sukuta-Jabang Highway. Dalaba Estates offers roads, street lights, a gated community that offers water reticulation system, solar street lights, and a proper drainage system. Over the next 10 years, Taft Africa Global aims to build 10,000 homes in the Gambia for you to own. For you to feel safe and secure in a community with all the necessities to live comfortably.
Welcome back, and now I am joined by our special guest today, who is a regular on the show, human rights activist and social commentator, Coach Pa Samba Jaw. Welcome to the Fatu Network News Review, Coach. Can you hear us?
Yes, thank you very much for having me.
It's an honor. Coach, following months and months of waiting, the draft constitution has finally made it to the National Assembly. But of course, we couldn't resist doing it with a little bit of drama here and there. What do you make of this draft constitution if you've read it?
Well, I think it is an interesting draft, and I am of the view that it is a lot more superior to the 1997 Constitution, which definitely any honest person would believe, can see that you cannot even know what is the current status of that Constitution, because it has been amended over 53 times within a span of, about 22 years or 23 years. So I believe that this current draft, with all its controversies or flaws, would usher in a new beginning for Gambians, where at least we'll have true separation of powers, respect for fundamental rights and freedoms, and at least give the Gambians a chance to where the era of self-perpetuating rule will be a thing of the past. So, in a nutshell, I am one of those who support this draft constitution and hope that the National Assembly will pass it as it is and then give the Gambian people the chance.
So you believe that this draft constitution is in fact better than the 1997 constitution that we still have in the country. But some Gambians actually believe that this was an absolute waste of time. They believe that the 1997 constitution was in fact good and that it could have simply been amended, the parts that, you know, that we thought were flawed and stuff, rather than spending like over millions of dollars to come up with this new draft on. What do you make of that?
Well, I would not quarrel with that argument because we are all entitled to our opinions. Yes, we could have amended the 1997 constitution. That could have been done. But there are some provisions in that constitution that are entrenched and could not be amended without having to subject it to a referendum. Now, this was a process that an act was published. It went before the National Assembly. The act was approved by the National Assembly. These people went around the country and around the world to seek the opinion of Gambians. And what is now important is that we have a document that is ready. And at the end of the day, whether the money that was spent was wasted, we've gone past that level. Because now what is before us is, do we agree that this is a better document for the Gambia now and in the future, or the 1997 constitution is better? And that would be something that would be subjected to a vote. That is, if the National Assembly passes this bill to at least give the Gambian people the chance to go to a referendum and determine which of these two documents they would rather have to continue to determine how our country is run.
Now that it is before the National Assembly, it is before the members of parliament, what is your expectation of them? We know that they might or will be divided along political lines as to some of the provisions. Of course, everyone is there to protect their interests, but what is your expectation of them as this document is put before them?
Well, my expectation is that they will be guided by the national interest and not immediate party interest. Because at the end of the day, constitutions are not written for today, they are written for today, tomorrow, and whenever. And constitutions are supposed to be documents that will stand the test of time, because it should guide how a country is governed, how people's lives are managed for the next 50, 100 years. So what I expect from the National Assembly is that, for me, I believe that the bill that is there, the draft, is a bill, should be passed as it is. And then the National Assembly should trust the Gambian people who were consulted during this process to make the ultimate decision as to whether they want this document to be their constitution or not. Because the reason I said that, Sergio, is that we all know that everybody wants something in there, and there is absolutely no way that we can all have what we want. If you want to have one group say that, oh, let's amend this part because it does not favor me, and other group will say, let's amend that other part because it does not favor me. At the end of the day, we'll have a problem. And laws, constitutions are written. There is a reason why we have courts. Because you'll write the laws, and the courts are there to interpret those laws. If anybody feels that there is a provision in a constitution that is passed that is not fully clear as to its as to how it is going to affect people. This is where people go to laws and then would challenge certain things so as to give the courts to come up with interpretations. And this is where the National Assembly can come back and say, you know what, based on the ruling of this, maybe we need a clearer language we can amend. You look at the United States Constitution. It was passed when? 1789. U.S. got its independence in 1776. There was no written constitution or one that was passed until 1789, about 30 years later. But since then, 1789 to date, it has been amended only about 27 times. So to me, like you said, yes, we all have our differences, but I hope that the National Assembly members would look at what is in the best interest
of the country,
of Gambians, and not what benefits one immediately.
I know that it took a little bit of time actually for this document to be put out there to the public. And there was a time I interviewed this guy who's a lawyer and a staunch supporter of President Barrow, who actually believes that the president should reject this document. What do you make of that?
Well, you'll have those people, you know, these political hard jobs. And the only reason, Sado, those who support Barrow are calling for the rejection of this bill is nothing but because of the interest of President Adama Barrow. Let's just be honest. And what is that? Because of the provision that talks about term limits, is counting the current term of the president as part of it. So to them, just because they would rather see President Barrow to be potentially president for 15 years, they would want to deny Gambians a document that is forward-looking. This is my thing. Because there is, you challenge them. We have had these conversations before. Challenge them on the specifics of the Constitution and why it should not be rejected. Why it should be rejected, sorry. And they would come to one only thing, that is, oh, President Barrow's term should not be included. Listen, when we fought, all of us, for change, the one thing that the coalition kept on saying was that they want to bring an end to self-perpetuating rule. Because we see in our country, President Jawara was in power for 30 years. Yahya Jammeh came and stayed in power for 22 years. And all these people, when they came, what they did was they entrenched themselves, making it absolutely impossible to be defeated at the polls. And we said, you know what? Maybe there should be a way of changing this, where we'll give the Gambian people the opportunity to at least change their governments. If they cannot change them at the polls, will restrict how long one can stay in power. That was the whole objective of the coalition 2016. And this was why they agreed and said, you know what, whosoever becomes the candidate, if you win, you will just serve for 3 years, after which you will organize elections in which you will not even serve. You will not even participate in the elections. That was the objective. President Barrow, he decided, you know what, I am not going to do that. I'm going to go back on my word. Instead of 3, I'll stay for 5 years. We said, okay. They said, you were not supposed to run. He said, oh, I'm also going to run. Now, instead of 3, he was 10. Then now you also want to add an extra 5. Listen, we should get away from that. This is about the country. This is not about an individual. And unless and until we start looking at what is in the vast interest of Gambians, the Gambia will continue to suffer and regress. Because you cannot tell me that just because you want President Barrow to be president for 15 years, the whole Gambian population will have to suffer because of the interest of one person who told us that Mom Dafa Doylu, he's not even interested in being in power. That's not what he does. He's a businessman. Come on now. Patriotism requires that we do what is in the interest of everybody and not what serves a person's individual interests.
And Coach, once we address this new draft constitution, like I said, it finally made its way to the National Assembly today. And of course, we couldn't resist doing it without a little bit of drama when the media, of course, I mean, some media houses were denied access to cover the 3rd ordinary session of the National Assembly today. What do you make of that for a country that has been really hard and advocating for freedom of expression, freedom of the press? What do you make of this situation?
Well, it is unconscionable, absolutely undemocratic, and run counter to anything that we expect from a country that espouses to be one that respects fundamental rights and freedoms. The 2020 draft constitution, that bill, is the most consequential bill to be brought before the National Assembly. Because it is a bill that should determine how our lives will be run for the next 50, 30, 100 years. So as a result, it behoves this government, especially the National Assembly, I'm not going to say the whole government, I'm going to say the National Assembly, to make sure that the people that they represent at least know what is happening in that building. So to sit and say that you are just going to restrict coverage to only 3 institutions is an affront to democracy, affront to human rights, and a slap in the face of everybody who fought and stood for freedom of expression and opinion. Listen, information is the lifeblood of any democratic society. And there is no justification for the restriction of the media houses from covering this session. And I believe that this must be reversed immediately. And I agree with the motion without notice that was presented by Honorable Halifa Saleh, that it is discriminatory. It is discriminatory. And it is undemocratic. And it should be unacceptable. And I was expecting that the other members would have stood up for what is right and said, you know what, unless we have the media houses to be here to cover it, we are not going to continue. And let's be honest here. They were going to talk about COVID-19. What are the restrictions? To stand 2 meters apart? Is that what they said in the Gambia?
But we have seen events where government officials are actually literally standing next to each other without face masks, by the way.
Oh, we've seen that. That's what I'm saying. So we have government officials who are flouting the rules. And the chamber of the national, I've been there. There is enough space for all the media houses to be there, and they can still observe the 2 minutes space. The Gambia is not the United States. We don't have 100 media houses. What I saw outside there, the media people that I saw out there, they were not even 50. So there should be enough space for people to be able to go there and at least transmit this very important information that affects the lives of everybody in that Gambia, from Koine to Kano. As to what is happening there, there is no excuse for it, and people sure that the gallery is open to all media houses from tomorrow so that they would cover this thing and bring the necessary information to the people.
So it seemed like they cherry-picked the media houses that they wanted to cover this important session. But even the one that was chosen to go live for this event, for some reason, the microphones were all muted. And some people actually have this theory that they were asked to mute the microphone so that the public wouldn't hear what they were saying. If this theory is true, what do you make of it?
It's a violation of human rights, and I'm very disappointed, and I'm going to lay the blame exactly at the feet of the Speaker of the National Assembly, who is a seasoned lawyer, who has advocated for respect for fundamental rights and freedoms. There is nothing that should happen in the National Assembly then that should be secret to the citizens of the Gambia. Especially this bill. Tabling of the bill, a mere tabling of a bill. Why should the media houses, the microphones be muted for that? What are they saying? What games are they playing? And you see, Sergio, quite often, officials of this government have accused media houses of peddling rumors. And this is one reason why people peddle rumors. Because if people are not getting the information from where they are supposed to get it from, then you're opening the door for a speculative citizenry, where all we do is speculate. And you cannot blame people today if they sit at the Bantaba, or go to Facebook,
and just make up stuff,
Twitter, or go to Instagram and make up stuff. Because of, you know what? People were not giving access to information that they should have. So if the government does not want people to be rumor mongers, the government must stop everything that breeds that. And what they should do, they should open up. And there is nothing easier than opening up the gallery to the media houses to go there and cover this thing verbatim or whatever they want to do, and then share it with the people, so that at least people tomorrow would go and say, you know what, at the main bantaba of our country yesterday, the National Assembly, this and this was discussed. If anybody distorts any information, you can have something to back it up with. But this government is the biggest peddler of rumors because of their means and ways of always trying to restrict information coming to the people.
Coach, you've heard about the $15 million grant that they're supposed to give to the Gambian media houses. People are saying that this is the time that Gambian media houses should actually refrain from taking this money because it's actually a recipe for censorship. What do you think?
Well, I know that the media houses are also suffering in that country. But there is a very thin line here. And the private media is supposed to ensure its total independence from those that it covers. So I am hoping that even if they see that they feel the need to take this money, I'm not going to tell anybody what they're taking or what they're not taking, especially if they're not stealing it. But if they're taking it, let them also make sure that they continue to be an independent media, to be independent media outlets, because absent which, people will rightly accuse them of being bought. But people are suffering in that country. It's not only the media houses. I spoke to an imam, an ustaz, and he was telling me how they are suffering because they rely on these daras and the payments that they get from it for their depas or whatever. Now nothing is coming. You talk to everybody in that country is suffering. But people must not also sell their soul at the altar of money. You must always be very principled, absent which you would have lost all credibilities and would have defeated the whole purpose of why a media house should be independent.
Thank you very much, Coach, for that interesting interview. We appreciate you for coming through to the Fatu Network News Review. Thank you very much for granting us this interview.
Thank you, Sergio. Thank you. Keep it up.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Well, that's it for News Review. Do join us tomorrow if you can. Thank you very much for watching, and bye for now.